"We're in Paris. No one shows up for your kid's party," my fiance's mom texted. Her daughter added, "You're adorable. We used your $30,000 family fund. Haha." I stood alone in the private hall I had booked for my son's birthday. I whispered, "Then you'll love what comes next." That night, I froze her $84,000 business loan, blocked every joint account, and revoked access to all cards. I stood alone in the private hall I had booked for my son's 10th birthday, staring at a row of untouched blue cupcakes, while my phone lit up again. The first text was from my fiance's mother, Denise. "We're in Paris. No one shows up for your kid's party." A second later, her daughter Marissa added her own. "You're adorable. We used your $30,000 family fund." Haha. For a second, I honestly thought I was reading it wrong. The hall smelled like frosting and pizza. The arcade vendor was setting up in the corner. A magician I had paid a non-refundable deposit to was asking if he should still do the second show. My son Eli was in the bathroom with his paper crown on, and my younger daughter Nora was standing near the gift table, smoothing the edge of a dinosaur tablecloth with both hands, like she could flatten the whole afternoon into something normal. No one from my fiance's side had come. Not Denise, not Marissa, not Marissa's husband. Not the cousins my kids had spent all week making favor bags for. Not even the aunt who swore she'd bring balloons because, in her words, a father shouldn't have to do every little thing alone. I looked at that message again. "WE used your $30,000 family fund. Not borrowed, not we had to. Used." My throat got tight so fast it hurt. My hands were steady, though. That was the strange part. I could feel the anger moving through me, but it had gone cold before it got loud. Eli came out of the bathroom smiling, then stopped when he saw my face. "Are they parking?" he asked. He said it casually, like it was a normal delay, like he still believed adults meant what they promised. I crouched down and fixed the crooked edge of his crown. "Some people aren't coming," I said. His smile didn't vanish all at once. It folded in, quietly. That was worse. Nora looked at me from across the room, already understanding more than I wanted her to. She was 7. She noticed everything, especially when people were trying very hard not to say something cruel out loud. "Did we do something wrong?" she asked. That nearly did it. There are moments when you realize the whole story you have been telling yourself about a family has been false for a very long time. That was mine. Not because of the money, not even because they skipped the party, because 2 children were standing in a room built for celebration, and the people who had taken from me for years had chosen that exact day to make sure my kids felt small. I stood up, looked at the phone, and whispered, "Then you'll love what comes next." I was Saul, 38, a researcher at a public policy institute in Baltimore. Most of my work was data, interviews, grant reports, and long quiet hours in libraries or on calls. I had 2 kids from my first marriage. Their mother had been out of state for almost 3 years, with contact that came and went depending on whatever crisis or romance was running her life at the time. So mostly, it was me. Me packing lunches, me checking homework, me sitting through piano recitals, and inhaler refills and fevers at 2 in the morning. Then, 2 years ago, I met Lena. She was warm, funny, smart, and the kind of person who remembered what your child said 3 weeks ago about a school project. She made my house feel less tired. She made me think maybe I wasn't done building a family. What I ignored were the people attached to her. Denise, her mother, was the kind of woman who spoke in polished concern and moved through other people's money like it was a public utility. Marissa, her older sister, was worse because she made greed look playful. She laughed while asking for things. She put emojis after requests. She called manipulation keeping it in the family. At first, it was little. A few $100s when Denise's bakery equipment needed repair and the bank was being impossible. $900 for Marissa's son's orthodontist because the reimbursement is coming any day. $3,000 when Lena cried in my kitchen and said the family fund would help everyone stay stable while Denise expanded her catering side into a small storefront. Just short term, she told me. Mom always pays back family. There should never have been a family fund, but I built one anyway. I told myself it was practical. I had savings. I had always been careful. Research work didn't make me rich, but it made me disciplined. I tracked every bill, every tuition payment, every pharmacy refill, every after-school fee. When Lena and I got engaged, I thought creating one separate shared support account for temporary family needs would stop the chaos. Instead, it gave Denise and Marissa a front door. The first year, I put in $12,000. The second year, more. By the time Eli's birthday arrived, I had contributed just over $30,000 into that account, supposedly for emergencies, temporary cash flow issues, bakery inventory, a van repair, a rent bridge for Marissa, and a group holiday plan that somehow always required me to cover the deposit first. Every time I hesitated, Lena said the same thing. They're difficult, but they're still my family. Every time I pointed out that my kids were being treated like accessories, not family, she asked me not to make everything transactional. Transactional. That word still makes me laugh in the darkest possible way. Because there was nothing more transactional than Denise's love. She would kiss Nora's cheek in public and then forget her birthday present. She would call Eli buddy at dinner and then book a cousin outing without including him, because the boys needed space. Marissa was more direct. She once told Nora, right in our kitchen, "You can come if there's room," when the other kids were talking about a museum day I had paid for. I said something that time, quietly. Lena told me later I had embarrassed her sister. That was the pattern. My kids got the slight, I got the bill. And somehow I was still the one expected to smooth the room over. The birthday party was supposed to be a reset. Eli had asked for one thing this year. Can I have everybody in one place? And can no one leave early? It broke my heart a little when he asked. Kids who are secure don't make requests like that. They assume people will show up. Mine had learned not to. So I overdid it. I booked a private hall with games, food, a little stage, and enough room for both sides of the family. I paid for custom cupcakes shaped like planets because Eli loved astronomy. I ordered a small sensory corner for Nora because big crowds tired her out. I made welcome bags by hand. Lena said her mother was thrilled. Marissa said her kids were counting the days. Then, the night before, Lena told me Denise had a quick family thing and might arrive late. That morning, Lena herself wasn't answering the phone. By noon, I had called 6 times. By 1, Denise sent Paris. Paris. While I stood in a rented hall in Maryland, trying to explain absence to 2 children, I stepped into the side corridor, opened my banking apps, and started pulling at every loose thread I had been pretending was not around my throat. First, the so-called family fund. Joint access revoked. Transfers frozen. External permissions removed. Then the business loan. That one mattered. 8 months earlier, Denise had wanted to turn her catering mess into a proper event bakery. No bank would give her the rate she wanted, and she had already exhausted 2 cousins and 1 line of credit. Lena begged me to help structure it. I didn't co-sign the business itself, but I did something almost as stupid. I agreed to secure an $84,000 private bridge loan through an investment account of mine, contingent on repayment milestones and active spending oversight. That oversight existed because I insisted on it. Denise had hated every second of that condition, while cashing every benefit of it. I called the lender liaison from the corridor while a balloon arch rustled softly behind me. "This is Saul Mercer," I said. "I need immediate suspension review on the Whitmore Bridge facility due to probable misuse, breach of family support declarations, and revoked authorizations tied to shared access." The woman on the line recognized my name at once. Researchers don't usually sound like they're canceling a war, so maybe I stood out. She asked if I was requesting a hard freeze pending documentation. "Yes," I said. "Effective today." She read me the consequences. Draw access paused. New disbursements halted. Review triggered. Cards tied to the operating reserve flagged pending account holder confirmation. I authorized all of it. Then I called the bank that held the shared checking accounts Lena and I had used for wedding planning and family expenses. I blocked every joint card except the one connected to our mortgage and utilities. I changed passwords. I removed device access from 3 phones I recognized immediately: Lena's, Denise's, and Marissa's husband, which should never have been there in the first place. That part hit me harder than I expected. He had access to not just Denise, not just Marissa through Denise, her husband. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself, to my attorney, and to the financial planner who had warned me a year earlier that blended families only work when boundaries are boring and absolute. I should have listened sooner. When I walked back into the hall, the magician was making Nora smile by pulling a silk ribbon from his sleeve. So I did the only decent thing available to me. I stayed. I smiled for photos. I cut cake. I sang. I made sure every child who did come got extra tokens and an extra slice. I took pictures of Eli with his classmates and with my cousin Renee, who drove 40 minutes with her twins after hearing half the story and saying only, "We're on our way." That was enough to keep me upright until the party ended. Lena arrived 20 minutes before cleanup, alone, no suitcase, no Paris glow, just a pale face and a phone clutched in both hands. "Saul," she said too softly. I was stacking paper plates. "Where are they?" She swallowed. "They left this morning. I found out after the flight was already boarded." I laughed once, not because it was funny. "You found out after they were in the air, but Marissa had time to text me that they used my money." Lena looked down. That was answer enough. Eli was in the next room opening presents with Nora. Their voices floated in and out through the half-closed door. I kept mine low. "Did you know about Paris?" "No." "Did you know they took from the fund?" "I knew Mom moved some money because of travel deposits. I didn't know it was that much. How much did you think it was?" She didn't answer. I did. "Enough that you hit it." That made her flinch. "There are fights that happen in heat, and then there are conversations that happen when something already died, and everybody in the room can smell it. This was the second kind. I was going to fix it," she said. "With what?" "Mom said she'd pay it back after the spring wedding orders." "Your mother says a lot of things." Lena's eyes filled, but I was too far gone to be softened by that. "Not after my son spent 2 hours pretending not to care who was missing." "Did you tell them not to come?" I asked. She looked shocked. "No." "Did you tell them it would hurt the kids?" "Of course I did. And they went anyway." She sat down hard on one of the folding chairs. "I thought if I could get them to calm down, they might still fly back tonight." That was when I finally looked directly at her and understood the whole shape of it. Not one person in her family had actually believed my children mattered enough to cancel a vacation. Not even her. The next 48 hours were ugly in a quiet way. Denise started calling from France as soon as the freeze notices hit. First furious, then injured, then theatrical. My phone filled with voicemails about betrayal, stress, humiliation, and how I was destroying a woman-owned business over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Marissa's messages were cleaner, meaner. "You don't get to pretend you're some victim. Mom deserved that trip. You offered the money, your kids had cake. Relax." That last one I kept. I still don't know why. Maybe because cruelty looks so small in plain text. Lena slept in the guest room that night, not because I told her to, because she knew. At breakfast the next morning, Nora asked, "Are we still getting married to them?" Kids say impossible sentences in the clearest way. Lena put her mug down and covered her face. Eli looked at his cereal and said nothing. I answered because someone had to. "No, not like before." That afternoon, I met with my attorney. Not for revenge, for containment. We pulled every document tied to the loan, the shared accounts, the wedding deposits, and the family fund contributions. Since I had structured the business loan with review clauses and clear use restrictions, the freeze was legitimate. Since the shared accounts involved my funds and my authorizations, my revocation stood. Since 2 of the cards had been used for non-approved travel and retail abroad, fraud review was now possible if I wanted to push it. I didn't, at first. I wanted one thing only: separation. I canceled the venue we'd reserved for the wedding. I canceled the florist. I kept the house, the kids, the routine, and as much dignity as I could salvage from a situation I should never have let get this tangled. Lena asked if we could talk that evening. We sat at the kitchen table after the kids were asleep. Same table where she had once helped Nora build a paper lantern for school. Same chair where she had cried and told me she wanted to be family with us, not just around us. I didn't think she'd go this far, she said. I was too tired for sharpness. She went exactly this far because nobody ever stopped her sooner. Lena stared at her hands. I was trying to keep the peace. At whose expense? She said nothing. So I did something I should have done months earlier. I opened a folder on my laptop and turned the screen toward her. I had every transfer listed by date. $700 for bakery refrigeration repair. $2,400 for Marissa's rent bridge. $3,000 for holiday cabin deposits that became a beach week I was never invited to plan. $850 for uniforms and camp fees for children who later told Nora she wasn't really a cousin. $600 here, $1,200 there. Card charges, grocery runs, utility catches, bridal brunch deposits for a wedding that now sat in pieces around us. At the bottom was the total. Lena went white. I didn't realize it was that much. I know. That was the problem. Because she never had to realize it. I did the noticing, I did the covering, I did the math, and then pretended it was love. She started crying then. Real crying, not the careful kind. But I had crossed into the exhausted place where another adult's tears no longer erased what they had allowed. I love you, she said. I believed her. That made it worse. I think you loved me, I said, the same way your family did, as the person who made things possible. She shook her head hard. That's not fair. No, I said, what they did to my kids wasn't fair. The missed calls multiplied after Denise and Marissa landed back from Paris and realized I was not bluffing. Denise came to the house first. She wore cream slacks and that stiff, expensive perfume she used when she wanted to look respectable, while saying ugly things. She stood on my porch with a bakery folder under one arm, like she thought paperwork might turn theft into urgency. I'm not here to fight, she said. I stayed in the doorway. Good. I need you to reverse the freeze. Payroll is tied up. Suppliers are calling. This isn't just about me. I almost admired the nerve. My son's birthday wasn't just about me either. Her mouth thinned. We had a family opportunity. Marissa's husband had points, and there was a last-minute package. We assumed the children would understand. The children. As if my son and daughter were random furniture. No, I said. You assumed I'd keep paying. She sighed, like I was tiring. Saul, do not reduce everything to money. That line from her on my porch, while my daughter colored in the living room behind me, nearly made me laugh in her face. I won't fund a family my kids aren't part of. I said it once. She stared at me. Lena is devastated. Then maybe she should talk to her mother. Denise stepped closer. You think you're teaching us some lesson. What you're really doing is making yourself look petty in front of everyone. That was when I noticed Eli standing halfway down the hall. Quiet. Listening. I opened the door wider so he could be seen. Denise saw him and smiled automatically. Too late and too false. He didn't smile back. I turned to her and said, calm as I had ever been in my life. You're off my accounts. You are off my loan. You are off my cards. There is nothing left to discuss. Then I shut the door. Marissa came 2 days later, but she didn't even pretend. She pounded on the door hard enough to scare Nora. When I stepped outside, she launched right in. Mom's payroll bounced because of you. No, because she spent money that wasn't hers. You're ruining a business over a birthday. That sentence told me everything. To her, humiliation was minor. Money was real. Children's feelings were decorative. Go home, Marissa. She laughed in my face. You always thought you were smarter than everybody because you work in your little research world with your little numbers. You don't even know how real families work. I folded my arms. Real families show up for children. That hit. I could tell because she got louder. You weren't even supposed to have access anymore. Lena said she was handling it. There it was. I didn't react on my face, but inside something clicked into place with brutal clarity. Lena had not just hidden the damage. She had tried to shift control away from me, while still expecting me to carry the consequences. Marissa kept talking. Something about stress, wedding pressure, how Denise had earned one nice thing for once. I barely heard the rest, because I was suddenly reviewing months of strange little incidents in a different light. Password reset emails. Receipts that seemed slightly off. A new card issued by mistake. Lena saying she would handle the budget so I could focus on work. All of it. I walked back inside without another word and called the fraud department. Not because I wanted drama, because I wanted clean walls between me and these people before they found another opening. 3 more cards were canceled that afternoon. A linked travel wallet was shut down. A secondary authorized user I had never approved was removed from a rewards account. I changed every password again, this time with 2-factor authentication tied only to my device and my office line. By evening, my phone looked like a siren. I did not answer. The quiet closure people imagine does not come quickly. First, it comes messy. First, it comes with doorbells and guilt, and cousins who just want both sides to calm down. First, it comes with accusations. I got all of them. That I was dramatic. That I was punishing women. That I was letting my ex-wife's abandonment make me paranoid. That I was controlled by pride. That I had overreacted because no one had physically harmed my children. That line came from Denise's brother, which told me exactly what story they were circulating. I sent one reply to the entire cluster of adults, trying to manage me back into usefulness. My boundary is simple. I am not your backup bank. I will not finance people who exclude my children. Do not contact my kids. Do not come to my home without invitation. Then I muted the thread. Lena moved out a week later. Not with screaming, not with slammed doors. She packed slowly, crying sometimes, quiet most of the time. The kids stayed in their rooms more than usual. Eli was polite. Nora was distant in the way only a child can be when someone has disappointed her enough that even being sweet would feel unsafe. Before Lena left, she asked if she could say goodbye to them. I let her. Nora handed back the little bead bracelet Lena had made with her last winter. Keep it, Lena whispered. Nora shook her head. You forgot us too. It was a small sentence, softly said. Lena cried so hard she had to sit down. I didn't interrupt. Some truths belong to the child who paid for them. After she left, the house was brutally quiet for about 3 days. Then it started feeling honest. I took the wedding binder off the shelf and put it in the hall closet. Not because I wanted to save it, because I didn't want it spread out in the kitchen like an injury. I returned what I could, disputed what had been misused, and let some deposits burn. That part stung, but it was a clean sting, a chosen one. The harder part was Eli. About 2 weeks after the party, I found him in his room rebuilding the favor bags he had made for the cousins who never came. Empty tissue paper, little glow sticks, plastic dinosaurs. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor, working carefully. What are you doing? I asked. He shrugged without looking up. I don't know. Fixing them. That nearly broke me more than the party itself. So I sat beside him on the floor and told him the truth in the plainest language I could manage. You did nothing wrong. Nora did nothing wrong. Some adults cared more about getting what they wanted than about how they made children feel. That is not your fault. He nodded, still staring at the bag in his hands. Are we poor now? He asked. I almost smiled. Kids always go to the concrete fear. No, I said. We're careful now. That answer seemed to settle into him. The consequences for Denise came fast after that. Without the bridge disbursement, the bakery expansion stalled. Suppliers tightened terms. One event had to be subcontracted. Then another. Payroll delays became public enough that even people outside the family started asking questions. I did not interfere further. I did not need to. Once my money stopped cushioning her decisions, reality handled the rest. Marissa tried one last angle through a mutual cousin. The message came trimmed in concern. Denise was under extreme emotional strain. Lena was not coping well, and perhaps I could at least release a portion of the loan reserve. For the sake of the staff, I replied with one line. The staff deserved an owner who did not finance Paris with a child's birthday. No answer came back. Spring arrived slowly that year. Baltimore did its usual thing where one day smelled like thawed dirt, and the next felt like winter again. Our house adjusted to itself. Fewer shoes by the door, less second-guessing. More room. Renee and her twins came over often. My neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, started dropping off soup on Tuesdays Because children heal better around soup, which was not scientifically tested, but felt true. Eli joined a Saturday science club. Nora took a watercolor class and came home with paint on her sleeves and a little more light in her face each week. Those were the real closures. Not Denise's silence, not the stalled bakery, not Lena's eventual email saying she had started therapy and finally understood what I had been trying to say. The real closure was watching my children relax. At the start of summer, on the weekend I had originally planned for a wedding tasting, we held a backyard dinner instead. Nothing fancy. A folding table under string lights. Burgers, corn, lemonade. Paper lanterns Nora painted herself. Eli invited 3 friends from science club. Nora invited the one girl from watercolor who always shared her brushes. Renee came with the twins and a cheap grocery store cake that leaned slightly to one side. Before we ate, Eli asked if we could bring out the birthday crown again just because the first day was weird. So I did. He put it on older somehow than he had looked at the actual party. Nora wore 1 too, smaller and silver. She said if her brother got a reset, she wanted one as well. We sang to both of them, not because it made a pretty moment, because it felt like repairing a sentence someone else had cut in half. There were 2 empty chairs at the edge of the yard. I had set them there without thinking at first, the way you do after years of planning around people who always take space. When I noticed them, I almost moved them back into the shed. Then I left them. Not out of bitterness. As a reminder, empty chairs tell the truth. They don't argue. They don't rewrite. They simply show who did not come. After cake, Nora ran inside and came back with a drawing. It was the hall from Eli's birthday, but redrawn. This time, the room was full. The tables were crowded. The stage had stars over it. Eli was in the center wearing his paper crown. She had drawn herself beside him, one hand on his sleeve. She had drawn me near the cake table, holding a stack of plates. No Denise, no Marissa, no Lena, just us and the people who had actually stayed. "Can I tape it in the kitchen?" she asked. "Yes," I said. And I meant yes in every possible way. So that drawing stayed on the side of the refrigerator all summer. No one threw it away when the corner curled. No one forgot to look at it. No one called it messy or extra or dramatic. It stayed because it mattered to the child who made it. That is what I learned in the end. Money doesn't just buy things. In the wrong family, it buys silence. It buys access. It buys the right to mistreat you while calling it closeness. It buys a fake version of peace where the generous person is never allowed to be hurt, because then the whole system might crack. I had been funding that system for years. Not because I was weak, because I was hopeful. Hope without boundaries is expensive. That was one lesson. Another was harder. Children always know when they are being managed instead of loved. They may not have adult words for it, but they feel it in invitations that never come, in gifts that arrive late, in photos they are asked not to stand in the way adults brighten for some children and dim for others. Eli and Nora had felt it long before I let myself name it. I hated that, but I changed what I could once I stopped pretending. I did not get revenge. I got distance. I did not destroy a family business. I stopped protecting it from the cost of its own choices. I did not turn cold. I turned clear. And clarity, I found, was quieter than rage, but much more permanent. Months later, Lena sent one final message, asking whether I believed people could change. I thought about it for a long time before answering. Then I wrote back, maybe, but my children are not the place where adults come to test that theory. That was the last message between us. Some nights, I still think about that private hall, the blue cupcakes, the stupid balloon arch, my son's quick, brave face when he realized who wasn't coming, the text glowing in my hand about Paris and $30,000, and a joke they thought was harmless because they were not the ones who had to kneel down and explain absence to a child. I don't relive it the same way anymore. Now, when I think of that day, I also remember what came after. The freeze confirmation screen. The cards going dark. The accounts locking one by one. The moment the flow stopped. The moment I finally understood that love without respect is just access, and access can be revoked. That was the real ending. Not loud, not cinematic. Just one calm financial boundary. held long enough to become a life. And in this house, that life got smaller, steadier, and kinder. My kids noticed first. That was how I knew I had done the right thing.